there are these secret gems in New Zealand. We never wanted to be seen as a tour agency. I wanted to be seen as a platform that could align both New Zealanders and other New Zealanders to connect and go out and do these amazing adventures.
Welcome back to another episode of a Kiwi Original. On today's episode, I speak with Ollie from Bushman Tours, a company where adventure meets conservation, two things that Kiwis absolutely love. So the next 20 to 30 minutes is all going to be about why we love the outdoors and why sometimes you might need an organization like Bushman Tours to make it even better than it is when you go on your own. So welcome to the show, Ollie.
Hey, thanks, Ryan. It's really good to be here. You've had some pretty amazing businesses on before me, so yeah, appreciate the opportunity.
You are welcome, and I'm sure this one's going to be just as amazing, if not more, because in part of what you're offering is our natural outdoors, right, and our natural bird life. It's globally unique. I mean, every business tries to find its own point of difference, but you've got that naturally as part of your product. So talk us through, what it is you do and the types of customers that really enjoy going on your tours.
Yeah, sure thing. You've hit the nail on the head there. It was relatively easy for us to find a product that people were going to love when it's New Zealand, and that's what we're dealing with. So we have always been passionate about our backyard, and Kiwis in general are outdoor people, I think. So it's always been something, like our small team have always wanted to do something like this. And a few years back when we started to decide on whether this idea was going to be just guiding or we could expand it, we realized very quickly when we started speaking to locals that there was a sort of almost hidden opportunity here. And, originally it was focused on the visitors, the international audience, with the, I guess, the selling point being that it's fully New Zealand owned and operated. And that isn't just the business, it's the Bushmen and the Bushwomen, the guides themselves. And so by building on that further a couple of years back, we realized that we had a bit of an opportunity here, as you say, right at our doorstep, which was just taking people out into this magnificent area, this country, which has really been put on the map globally for its beauty and its wildlife and its natural environment. So, it's exciting times.
And so talk us through that difference, because I think a lot of... you expect when you go overseas that you're going to a country you may not know as well as your home country. So it's more obvious or likely that you'll look for guide support either for educational reasons or health and safety reasons, or just because it's mandatory. What's the difference for Kiwis locally in New Zealand wanting to go on a guided tour? Because I think a lot of people would think, well, there's dock signs. Why don't I just follow those? What's a guide going to do over and above what I could do myself?
Yeah, it's a very valid question. And look, I think this isn't probably for everyone, right? There are people who can go out and do these trips on their own. And by all means, we're still going to be here to provide them with a bit of advice on where to go, what to look for, that sort of stuff. But the selling point I think we figured out really early on was that it all revolved around the people, the Bushmen and women who are taking out Kiwis and showing them corners of New Zealand that they might have heard about but not known how to get to. And I really think our passion lies in finding these areas and these, Kiwi2 covenant places on these stations, these private stations like that. No one's going to get to unless you know the owner and you know the guide. And we never wanted to be seen as a tour agency. That was a really important thing for us. We wanted to be seen as a platform that could align both New Zealanders and other New Zealanders to connect and go out and do these amazing adventures. And they are quite dynamic, actually. There's no sort of, right, we're just going to take you for a walk. It's really quite dynamic in terms of what you want to be doing. That's unique to you as an individual. So I believe from the customers we have and the people we're speaking to, and especially, with COVID obviously happening, people are much more vocal than they probably have ever been in terms of what they want to do. And the overall message is, if I'm going to travel, which I want to, around New Zealand, I want to do it with other Kiwis. I want to do it with people who understand the reasons for why I'm traveling. they want to go and connect with other experts who are passionate about the region that they live in. And I think, when you do look on our list of Bushmen, every single one of them has got very, very niche and specific skill sets and also passions. It all revolves around conservation, and it always will, but you really are going to get a different tour, a different outcome, and a different experience every single Bushman you pick, which is quite rare in the tourism industry, I think. You usually book your ticket and you get your inventory and what's going to happen that day per hour. But we've really tried to move away from that and make it about what being a Kiwi is all about, right? Getting outdoors and having a good time and really embracing our small 2 islands that we live on, 3 islands. That's primarily been what we try to focus on.
I think my own experience going on some of the great walks, like I did the Kepler track in December, and I could see there were international tourists being guided, and the ones that weren't tended to be Kiwi. And I remember saying to my girlfriend at the time, we don't know a lot about the flora and fauna we're walking through. So I spent 3 whole days then. Yes, I could see, those are the kaka, I could see the falcons, you could identify the birds, but here's all of this this undergrowth and all these different levels of altitude that I really didn't have any clue about. And I thought, why am I actually walking this track? Is it to get to the highest point? Is it to say I've done one of the great walks? Or is it actually to experience it and having something meaningful along the way? And that's when I saw your application come through, I thought maybe there is a better way to experience nature that's more than just bagging peaks or how fast can I do it. I'm interested in it. What would be maybe, let's say, one walk or experience that Kiwis maybe wouldn't normally do or know about in the South and the North Island that speaks to one of your packages?
Yeah, it's funny because, obviously I'm really diving into the stats at the moment with what's happening with the market. And, a few years back, up to 85% of Kiwis were really passionate in some way about conservation, right? So we really kind of took that number as, well, there are people out there. So our packages and the things that we're sending our guides and our customers out on need to somehow relate to that. So I guess the uniqueness of an experience with us will always revolve around that one value is how do we get you to go out and understand the difference between a native and an introduced plant, for example, and the impacts that those two have. And obviously the introduced pests and that sort of thing. But a good example, a good adventure we've got at the moment is with a really well-known pig hunter down here in the South Island, a guy called Sean Monk. And he runs the conservation work and the maintenance of a private station. And we went out with him a couple of months ago to get some marketing material and actually understand what it is that makes this experience different. Because I'll put my hand up and say, I've never done a tour of any kind on a private station before. But less than 2 hours in the walk, he's walking us through privately owned land, but it's Kiwi2 conservation land. It's highly protected. And so, yes, you can go and do these great walks, and you should, because they're obviously stunning and it's important to help dock and all these sorts of things. But there are these secret gems in New Zealand that are just so readily available. And that's our whole point here, is to try and get people to go out and experience these historic huts that were built by the owner's family 100 years ago. And, they're just these massive log cabins that you just wouldn't believe if you saw them. They're absolutely amazing. And then on the other hand, you've got in the North Island where Bushman Emma, who's pretty well known for her collie Coda. So they're a pair, right? They go out together into the Taurua Ranges and do a lot of trapping, conservation work. And I remember when we reached out to her, the first thing she said was, I really like this idea, but how do we get people involved with trapping and helping me go out and reset them, and how do we get funding for it? And that single question probably set the foundation of what we then, made the platform on and the marketing. And it was, okay, we're going to take you through Tower Ranges. You're going to see some amazing sights. You're going to go and stay in huts and probably meet other Kiwis. You're obviously going to get a wealth of knowledge from Emma, but at the same time, you're going to go and help reset those traps along the route. You're going to help record what's been caught. And we were thinking about this last night, actually. Those sorts of experiences are quite rare, where you're really hands-on with the work that other Kiwis are doing, right? And I guess from a domestic angle, if there are 85% of Kiwis who are interested to somehow support this, we believe we've got a way to make that happen. And it starts with our Bushmen and women who are going to take you out there. So, especially the Sean experience we went on, it was just mind-blowing. You'd gone from being on these, dot tracks, marked routes and stuff, to really in a playground of nature is what it was. And, there were so many rare birds there that we've never seen before in Canterbury. So, yeah, it's great.
I think we all have parts of our backyard that we all recognize and we know really well. It's only when we travel outside of that, our city or our local areas, that we need support, or we need maps, or we need a guide. And I think the second part of your answer there around what goes into that experience, it's more than just watching through a pane glass or being guided forward through a track that at the end you go, well, I could have probably done that myself. I think you're onto something where you're making it a co-creation of value. It's something where it's helping nature, it's also helping your business, and it's helping that individual express the need that which is, I care about nature, so I should do something about nature.
Absolutely, yeah. I think Kiwis are, and New Zealand as a whole, including businesses as well, are constantly passionate to make some sort of change and innovate and join these movements. I went and took some photos of the climate protest, and had friends in the UK, in Bristol, who went to their version of that. And there just seemed to be this, big difference in how it was presented and the messages that were put across. Same sort of outcome, right? Like, we're all trying to make people aware of this, but I think Kiwis, and they've probably shown this during COVID as well, is they're very passionate, and there's an opportunity to kind of almost grab that passion and put it towards really meaningful outcomes. And look, if the one thing we can do is try and connect people, and that's ultimately what we're trying to do here, connect people to go out and have education, have these meaningful experiences, and then hopefully at the end of it, they've now found ways to donate or be part of a cause. And I think ultimately it's actually quite fun. It doesn't feel like you have to, jump on the phone and do a subscription every month. It's, if you're going to go out and pay for a tour of any kind, imagine actually leaving it with a bit of personal touch left behind, and that's one of the small things we do. For example, is if you do donate a trap while you're booking with one of our Bushmen, your customer number goes on it, and you're able to then have updates of that trap for the rest of its life. So, you can have emails come through and say, hey, look, this month you've caught 50, 100 stoats. And it's those little things we think will remind people that they can make a difference. One trap goes a long way. And so that's just one of the incentives we're trying to push in our new platform as well, is to make it as easy as possible, as smooth and simple as possible for people to go and do this sort of stuff. And New Zealand's just such a great place to be doing that. It really is. We're blessed, I think.
That's brilliant to hear that, in that you're actually going beyond the tour by giving people access to the insights of the trap and how their trap is performing. You're actually giving them information that they can then repurpose into a story that either gives them purpose and belonging for what they're doing, or if they decide to reshare it through their own news feeds, it then can give them status within their own groups, which is the status not of, I'm a billionaire, but the status of I'm contributing to protecting New Zealand's wildlife.
Yeah.
How are you going to be able to, what's the plan? I'm sure you've done some thinking around Now with international tourists not coming in, and the ability for those tourists to take those stories back is now severely reduced. How are you adjusting your business over the next 3 to 6 months?
Yeah, it was obviously a little bit of a shock, and that probably goes across all providers in this industry. In tourism's been hit very hard. The thing that's kind of funny is we planned for disruption. We're very fortunate to have a senior consultant in the resilience space who's co-director of Bushman Tours. So we spent a bit of time figuring out early on, 2 years ago, as soon as we registered the business, how do we maintain our plan here? And so when all of a sudden the borders are shut, we probably had a couple of hours of panic and then realized, oh, hold on, we've been thinking about this all along. We've been thinking about how do we get Kiwis involved. Our Bushmen and women are New Zealanders, so we didn't have to worry about making sure that people knew that we were a New Zealand business, because they were doing it for us as well. And that has been proven to be quite useful, right? I mean, New Zealand-owned businesses right now are at the pinnacle of us getting back on track, and it's a really fascinating time. But the plan was always to maintain the momentum of the platform, make sure that we're continuing what we're doing, and touch wood, but I honestly feel like we're thriving in what we're building and the innovation that we're trying to put through our platform and our marketing. So one of the challenges I had before COVID was trying to get as many people internationally to know who we are and what we do. And there's so much noise in that sector that it was actually proving quite difficult. And when I looked at the numbers, the majority of our audience, up to 90%, were based in New Zealand anyway.
Really?
So
wow.
Yeah, it was almost a little bit of a blessing in disguise that all of a sudden the borders are closed, because now we have a reason and excuse only to focus on domestic. And what really shocked me in a good way was that we'd spent all these months leading up to January, February, trying to constantly share what our values and our purpose was. And really the only people who were communicating and reacting to that were Kiwis. So there wasn't a lot for us to do. We kept to the plan, we kept to what we wanted to do. And the difference now was the wording wasn't, hey, when you visit New Zealand, it was, hey, when you're allowed out and you want to go and travel through your New Zealand, we're ready to go, and we want to help you see that in a way that you've never seen it before. So, yeah, it's interesting. I think obviously we're coming into winter, so it'll be quiet anyway. The hunters have been severely affected by this, and these guys, they plan all year for this very moment. And so we're trying to find ways to maybe connect those guys again, try and get them to find ways to get back out throughout winter, and then focus heavily on that summer market. And especially the Auckland crowd are keen movers. They either go up to Northland or right down to the south. So we want to make sure that there are things available for them to do. And that comes down to recruiting more Bushmen. So in about a month's time, when the platform's finally finished, we will be recruiting for Bushmen all across New Zealand. It'll be our biggest recruitment drive. I mentioned this to an editor at one of the outdoor magazines, and he didn't believe me, because obviously everyone's making the majority of their staff in the tourism industry redundant, and we're about to do our biggest recruitment drive. So it's quite exciting in that respect. We've also just started what we call lensmen, so photographers who do go out into the backcountry and they do go and take these pictures, wonderful pictures of our native wildlife. We're now paying for their expenses. They can sign up with us. They can sell their work on our website. We'll pay for them to go out and get these photos, and just get them all involved. The imagery is really important. So I believe we're being very active, and that's how we've all got to be, right? Like during these difficult times, just got to keep moving and keep inspired and keep positive.
Sorry to interrupt. This won't take long. Subscribe to the show and you'll never miss another one of these amazing episodes. Right, back to the show. For that Auckland group that you mentioned, what would be a trip that someone or a couple who are 65 plus, they're active, should be booking with you now so that they've got their summer planned? And then maybe a second group, which is family of four, a couple of teenagers, a couple of parents in there, let's say the 40s, 50s, that they actually just need some space. They want to take their kids on something that's really good. Their kids don't really want to go on holiday with them anymore, but this particular trip's going to seal the deal for it. Talk about maybe a couple of examples for those Aucklanders that, or anyone in New Zealand that can do it.
Yeah, that's it's definitely a crowd we've looked heavily into, especially the last couple of months. So I'd say if there's some Aucklanders who want to get out of the city and want to get out of the chaos that's probably going to come up pretty soon when everyone gets back to work. The south is always a really obvious place. Canterbury is, there's so much to do here. And I think the challenge with Canterbury, for example, is you get to the city, you don't really know how to get to the mountains that you can see. And most people go up the Port Hills and whatnot, and they miss out on the agriculture world that is very, very close to the city. So I would say for people in their sort of later 50s and those that need a bit of time to get away, get somewhere quiet. We've got a guy called Keith down south. He lives in Arrowtown, just outside of Wanaka, Queenstown area. And he's in his, I want to say late 60s, right? And he's guiding people. And he has taken out some pretty young customers of ours. But what he does as a treat is takes you through his town, and he takes you through to one of the gold mining shops there, and he knows the owner, and he introduces you, and then he'll take you gold panning, which other people do. But Keith's got this, 30-year history and knowledge of where to go gold panning. And we took a German family out over Christmas, and you go to this very corner of the river. It's beautiful. There's trees hanging over. He shows you how to do your gold panning. He pulls out a picnic while you're doing it. There's a couple of beers and homemade food, which comes from his wife as well. It's just really inclusive. And then at the end of that experience, especially for the older generation, they want to know, okay, first of all, this has been great, but what should I be doing throughout the rest of this region tomorrow for the rest of my holiday? And people like Keith, they live and breathe that place. So he will share what to do, and it doesn't come with an extra price tag either, which is really important. It's about making sure that they know what else to be doing. So you don't have to be climbing up Roy's Peak. You don't have to be doing the route burn and the Kepler. You can go and literally sit on the side of a river in a canyon and fish for gold. And then the other side of that is, those younger generations. Again, going back to Sean, but a couple of our guys do it now. Parent and child combo packs. So what this is, and I really think this is amazing. I do not have credit for this at all. This came from Sean himself, and we've seen it through our research. But the package is, you've got your father and son, mother and daughter, whatever it might be, and the parent is made to look like somewhat of a hero, right? And very much, instead of it being the guide, it's actually the parent who's being seen to lead the group. And what Sean does in particular is he'll kind of brief the parent before the trip, let them know like this is the plan. And the child goes from seeing, especially if they're from the city, right? If they're from Auckland, it's a little bit of a shock for the child to see their parent now in, a Swazi and just covered in mud. And whether you're hunting or you're just going out into the mountains, it's this all of a sudden almost like a superhero package. And that's all because we positioned it to not be about the guide and not necessarily even be about the walk or anything like that. It's about the kids and the parents. So yeah, look, I think we're trying to get across as many audiences as possible, but the whole point of what we're building from a platform perspective is that you're able to customize this once you've connected with the Bushman. There's a chat function, there's all that sort of stuff. And you can say, hey, look, I'm in my early 20s, and to be honest with you, I just want to go out as high as I can on a peak. I've never done it before, but that's what I want to do. And we have people that are, experienced to be able to make that happen, but make it happen in a way that it's almost life changing. So, there's variety. I would say, I was speaking to someone yesterday about this actually. There are audiences we don't want to be taking out, and I think we have to maintain this, strong ethos on what we want to be doing here. And for those who want to go and bungee jump and do all those sort of really crazy activities, sure, go and do that. But if you don't have a connection with the outdoors or wanting to help or conservation, then we're probably not the people for you. We're really focused on you going out into nature and us finding a way to make it memorable and personal. So
it sounds like you've really thought these, not just the activities through, but you've thought about what the motivation might be and some of the potential barriers, like a mum or a dad feeling like they're on the tour as well, and it takes away that feeling of leading or being independent. What's the backstory of how you got into this, Ollie? Because your accent, it sounds to me like you're from England. I'm going to guess that. I'm not going to guess where, although I've done 8 years over there. What got you here and into this particular role, and seeing what New Zealand has to offer in a different way to other tourism operators?
Yeah, so it originated, I think, this passion from, being at my grandparents, who would only allow me to watch Crocodile Hunter when I was, a little kid, and just this absolute fascination with what, to me, when I was young, was just this red land, and he would go to all these different places, and it just sparked this kind of, obviously he was so passionate, right? And I wanted to find a way somehow, no matter what, to be doing something along those lines. And I grew up trying to get into rescue parks and working these conservation parks. Worked at a place called Monkey World in Dorset, which if people have seen, there used to be a show called Monkey Business, and it was the most incredible experience. And I remember working there for a couple of years. As a kid, I was 12, I think, and it changed everything. So when we eventually emigrated to New Zealand, when I was a young teenager, I think I was very shocked with how the lifestyle was. One of my best ever first friends picked me up in a tractor after school, and that was unheard of in the UK. And so I just started to realize there was this passion between Kiwis that I've just never come across. I've traveled the world with my parents, and it's always been very about the world and the outdoors. So I think that was always there. But when I was in the UK last, I was in Bristol between sort of 2012 and 2016. So it was a fair stretch. And what I picked up there was this experience around people collaborating, working together on problems. And specifically, I worked in a media agency, and we dealt with some really big names. And one of them actually was Xero accounting software. They were trying to introduce themselves to the UK market. And so we were part of the campaign around that. And I started to realize that there are some really, bright minds out there, obviously, but there are ways to bring all these people together. And I became obsessed, I guess, with the entrepreneur lifestyle and trying to find ways to build something from nothing. When I got back to New Zealand in 2016 after a bit of travel, I guess those two things kind of came together. And I specifically remember it, actually. We were out on a track called the Wharfdale, which is in Oxford in Canterbury. And this farmer picked us up because we basically stuck our car into the Ford to get into this track. And it was either turn back or add another 10K onto a 14K walk. And so this farmer picked us up in his ute, and he's driving us out. And I just remember him turning to me and just going, "Look how beautiful this is." And there was snow on his farm. I've never seen someone so passionate about where they work. And it was then I have to do something about this. I have to figure out a way to do this as my job and find a way to continue to get these people together. And, I think all those experiences and my upbringing probably was coming to this, it was coming to Bushman Tours, and it's been so rewarding meeting the people that we've got as our Bushmen. It's hard. I'm almost speechless, right? Because coming from the UK, having a New Zealand business that's got your guys' branding on it as well is just a massive honour for us to be able to get to this point. And we're only just getting started. So, we'll see. But we're certainly passionate. I think everyone who works for Bushman Tours needs to have a love for Steve Irwin. That's the number one rule.
The business owners I've spoken to who didn't grow up in New Zealand, their perspective on what New Zealand is and what New Zealand Made represents is very different, and it's humbling to hear it. So a lot of our listeners now will be kind of amazed with how you're describing our collective country. And I think you're actually potentially part of the next future solution for where tourism should or could go. Because that model that we used to have in the 80s and 90s, which is let the world know about New Zealand, and we're these crazy adventurers, we do extreme things, and the monetization was, okay, what volume can we get from what markets to monetize that, to bring what was very few tourists into some iconic regions. We were so successful at that, we've now got a volume problem. And what I'm hearing with your proposition is it's not mass volume. There's small groups. There's a one Bushman per guided group. That group is contributing to nature, not taking away from it. And that's helping everyone. So I'm going to ask you the big question, which is, how do you know when you've been successful? Like what's been done? Like, what's the answer? How?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And success to us is, one of the biggest replies I probably got from one of our recent tours before everything got locked down was that kind of idea of the Bushman's knowledge and the fact that they left realizing something about New Zealand that they never knew. And that could be a variety of things. This specific meeting was around the destruction that introduced plants were causing. And it was just the fact that this Kiwi said, okay, I've lived here my whole life. I've gone to this tiny little corner of New Zealand and I've learned something that's a game changer for me. And they were explaining about how, when you walk on tracks, if there's mud in the middle, most people will go around it. But that actually then causes this track to go out into native bush. It doesn't seem like much, but it's these little things. And they were saying how, it's really shocks for them that they've been here this long and are still learning these things about their wonderful country. And so success is both, our three kind of main values is people, outdoors, and conservation. Getting people outdoors it kind of happens in the wrong one set. So the success is that they just book with us, because people booking with us are doing it because they've heard our voice, our purpose, and they get it and they want to be part of that. So that's already successful outcome for me. But then the bonus, the kind of icing on the cake is when they leave and they go, okay, I really feel like there's something that's happened here, and they've left with an impact, whether it be through trapping. They don't always have to do that, but it's them going away going, I've now learned something about my own backyard that I never knew. And I think organizations like DOC and there's plenty of charities and foundations that we have here, they're all trying to do their part, and they're really good at making sure people are aware of what's happening. So yes, that's the first part, but for us, the next part is getting them to physically experience it and go out and leave with this kind of changed perspective. Always have a piece of them where they were on tour, really. So yeah, success is making sure Kiwis can fall back in love with their country, I guess, actually. So
that's a wonderful message. And just before we finish up, I wanted to pick up, because I missed the follow-up question on this. You're saying that you are expanding and looking for more Bushmen to join Bushman Tours, whether male or female. I know that you've got both genders. That's just the Bushman is a kind of the name for it.
Yeah.
To help you with that drive, what are the people and their attitudes and their experience and skills that you want from either tourism or hospitality that might be sitting at home right now going, my career aspirations are over? Who do you want, and what can they then expect to do if they get shortlisted?
Sure. So our application is pretty comprehensive because everything we're doing at the moment is quite virtual. So that allows us to expand and scale pretty quick. So they will go through an application that asks them about their experience and really where their passions lie. And I'll be honest with you, it's relatively challenging in New Zealand because most people are on the same page as us. So the individual, if someone's watching this right now, what we're looking for is, are you able to passionately describe your region and provide the knowledge and the history of that region that you're living in? And why is it that you want to share this with other people, whether they're in that region or outside? And what's the end result for you as well? Because obviously we have our kind of what we want to happen after every tour and every booking, but it's also about you guys. And that's why I believe people like Bushman Emma and Jill and all of these wonderful people we've got, they've all got one thing they want to message to their visitors. And so if you don't have that off the top of your head straight away, then this probably isn't for you. But if you're really passionate about what you want to be achieving when you take someone out, that could be anything, then we want to hear from you. And your experience, this is the other thing, there's this misconception that you have to be a really qualified guide that's done Mount Everest or at least Mount Cook, and you don't. You can be, and I'd love to hear from you. But actually, some of the most exciting people we've got at the moment are those who, went through earthquakes and natural disasters, those who have been part of significant conservation events. You don't have to be able to necessarily climb mountains every day. There are people who do coastal tours and stuff like that. So if you've got something special, something that's exciting, if you want to get back outside, that's for sure, then we definitely want to hear from you, and we will we'll put you through the application, and it is a pretty smooth, quick process. So once you're through, you get your logging and you start designing and selling your tours by Bushman Tours. It's really, we try to make it as simple as possible for the Bushmen so that they can focus on that experience.
Wonderful opportunity, and what a time to be able to provide at least a handful of people some solution or way out from what they weren't expecting in 2020. Before we finish up here, Ollie, is there anything I haven't asked you about Bushman Tours or messages that you want to finish out with?
Yeah, I mean, I think the bottom line for us is in 2020, and I know you've pushed this message a lot, Ryan, around spending locally, and it does come down to in tourism, it comes down to the operators as well, right? We want people to spend locally, but we also have to meet them halfway as well. The dollar value that are in places like Queenstown and Auckland, it has to change. If we want our New Zealanders to spend with us, we need to accommodate that and realize that these other markets aren't here anymore. So I think for us, we really strongly encourage, at least in the tourism industry in New Zealand, for people to start considering how we're going to help New Zealanders revisit and reconnect with their country. Going down to places like Queenstown is going to be a pretty empty drive this year, which is going to be amazing, right? So we have to be as proactive and innovative as we can for the 2021 summer. And look, I think our message, or my message here is if we all stick together and us Kiwis continue to spend local and embrace just the awesome businesses we've got here, I think we'll be okay. So we just got to hang in there.
Great message. I'm certainly on board with you, Ollie, and appreciate your time today, and appreciate just how you've managed to shift what tourism might be through looking at what some of our natural features and natural assets out in nature in a different way. And wouldn't it be great to look back in 5 years and see that this was the moment, through accident and also purposeful analysis of how you're treating this shift as a start of a different way of doing not just domestic tourism, but the way we look after nature for our international tourists in our key hotspots. So thank you very much for your time today on A Kiwi Original, and I wish you the best of luck with your hiring drive, which is great to actually say that on day one of level 3 of a little bit less of a lockdown.
Yeah, no, I agree, Brian. Thanks so much for having me. It's been awesome, and look forward to continuing to be part of this community.
Sounds good. Thanks, Ollie. This has been a Kiwi Original brought to you by the New Zealand Made team. Thanks for watching. The New Zealand Made trademark is used by over 1,200 businesses in New Zealand. The New Zealand Made team licenses that trademark. Check if you're eligible at bynz.org.nz. If you feel that someone should see this, share it with them now. Otherwise, subscribe to youtube.com/bynzmade, and we'll see you on the next episode.